Welcome to the show, everybody. It is September 8th, Thursday. Gonna dive headfirst into some stuff in just a little bit here. Allow me to say up front, I am high as a kite on caffeine. I had double the amount of caffeine that I would normally have, and I do feel like Don Jr. right now. I do. All I need is the fucked up eyes and the terrible impression of my own dad. And by the way, my thoughts on uppers, apropos of nothing, is that they're kind of trash. Like I feel good right now, having a whole bunch of caffeine in my body, and I'm looking forward to the show, and I'm bouncing off the walls, and my mind's going 1,000 miles an hour. But uppers also suck because there's an inevitable crash. Like it always happens. You're always gonna crash at one point or another, and the crash, I feel like, is too much to justify the high. You know what I'm saying? And I never felt that way about downers. I never felt like I like crashed at all from any kind of downer. You just sort of go down and you're chilling and you're relaxing, and then you like slowly taper out of relaxing into just normalness. Whereas when you get high, you eventually crash back down, and like I'll be yawning and shit later and all sorts of stuff. So anyway, today we got a lot to talk about. Before we get into the stories, real quick, very interested, quick question for all y'all. Post it in the comments section below. How many of you have now started listening to the show on Spotify or Google Podcasts or wherever, on one of the podcast outlets? Now that it's available there, the show in its entirety, every day that we do a show, how many of you have started listening over there? I'm curious because, you know, obviously my audience is primarily a YouTube audience, but I'm curious how many of you have checked out the show on the podcasting outlets. I'm just trying to get a little bit of a temperature reading, so go ahead, post that in the comment section below if you haven't yet. Very interested in that. And so the stories we got going for today's skis, we have in Texas, there's a new poll that just came out about their new very restrictive abortion law, and spaghettios for the Republican Party, because it is even worse than they could have ever imagined. We have a story about how Dark Brandon may be re-entering the Iran deal, but the roadblocks he's going to hit brought up by his own party, by Democrats that are to the right of him, and by the way, by a significant amount, might I add. And then I have some new numbers for you on what percentage of Americans will have election deniers on the ballot in the upcoming election. And that is not at all pretty, man. It is not good. And then later on, I want to talk a little bit about, so there's a new Politico owner. You know, the sort of a very establishment outlet, Politico. They have a new owner. Now, that owner swears up and down, hey, man, I'm nonpartisan, and I just want to bring back journalism to what it's supposed to be, bro. Above the fray, just tell the truth. Well, this guy was just caught. He was just outed as being a massive fraud. Because he says, like, I'm nonpartisan, I'm a centrist, bro. He's caught dead to rights on an email from very recently being like, rah Donald Trump. So look, the reason why that story matters is it's very indicative of a larger trend that you see in media, where a lot of people like to posture as like, I'm just a reasonable centrist, bro. But then when you get into the specifics, it's like, I'm a centrist who agrees with the right 93% of the time. Is that really centrist? All I do is beat up on the left while morally preen and virtue signal like I'm an above the fray centrist. And I love the right, but still just call me a centrist. Okay, shut up, please, for the love of God. Anyway, so let's go ahead and dive into the first story here. New poll shows Texas abortion ban is unpopular. 1 year after Texas implemented Senate Bill 8, which was then one of the most restrictive abortion bans in the U.S., Texas voters are showing widespread support for abortion access and are more politically motivated to vote for change. According to a recent poll by Perry Undum, which surveyed over 2,000 voters across various demographics, 60% of Texas voters believe abortion should be available in all or most cases, with only 11% of Texans wanting abortion banned in all cases. So let me explain what that means to you. That means the percentage of voters in Texas who want to see all abortion banned is even lower than the percentage in the entire country. Because I've seen numbers that range anywhere from like 13% to 19% of the country wants to see all abortions banned. In Texas, it's only 11%. Wow. 9 out of 10 surveyed also agree that Texas politicians are out of touch with their electorate, the poll shows. Since the 6-week abortion ban, the state's policy on abortion has become even stricter, successfully banning abortion at conception except in very slim circumstances where the pregnant person's life is at risk. So in other words, sounds like there's no exceptions for rape and incest. It's only if the life of the mother is in danger. And by the way, we got a story that I'll talk about in a little bit about how you need to literally be on death's doorstep for them to say, okay, now you can do the abortion. So even if a doctor knows, hey, you will be in a life-threatening situation in a couple weeks, they have to wait the couple weeks until it actually happens, which is just psycho stuff. Even then, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is currently in court challenging the federal government on the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, forcing hospitals and physicians to decide when is the right time to provide care. So, okay, let me break that down for you a little bit. Biden said, look, just so everybody's clear, you cannot ban abortion if the mother's life is in danger. You can't do it. You can't do it because that's federal law protects abortion in those circumstances, and you can't at the state level override that. So the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is like, my ass, I'm going to sue you over that. So in other words, even though they say, hey, if the life of the mother is in danger, we'll allow the abortion here, Ken Paxton is trying to make it so that that's not the case, because he's suing Biden when Biden reiterated that fact and said that's federal law. He's like, no, I'm going to sue because that shouldn't be federal law. So then to a guy like Ken Paxton, even if the mother's life is in danger, he says you should still be forced to carry the baby to term. Wow. With 2 months until Election Day, Planned Parenthood Texas votes executive director Diana Limon Mercado said abortion rights are a top issue for Texas voters across the political spectrum. Quote, there is a real path to victory, especially for our statewide candidates this election cycle, and a real possibility that's palatable in ways that it hasn't been before. Nonetheless, despite Texas GOP elected officials' restrictive abortion policies, over 68% of Texas voters from age 18 to 44 say they can see a certain scenario where getting an abortion might be the best option. Wow. So, and then they go on to give, some examples of that here. Guys, this is big. This is big. So basically only 11% of Texans agree with the policy that Texas Republicans are currently implementing. Only 11%. This is unprecedented. And we have seen in recent elections, the backlash is occurring. So there's that famous district in upstate New York, which is viewed as a perfect, what's called a bellwether district, which means like this is indicative of, it's a perfect swing seat, basically. And what happened in that district is the Republican was up in the polling by like 5 to 8 points going into Election Day. And then the Democrat ended up winning. So this is an instance where, if anything, it's the Democrats who are outperforming the polls, when in the previous like 3 or 4 elections, it's been Republicans who outperformed the polls. Even when Trump lost, he outperformed the polls. So, but here's an instance of the exact opposite happening. So first of all, the polling industry is kind of broken, right? But that shows enthusiasm on the Democratic side that's way above and beyond what anybody thought we would see. And again, the main reason appears to be Roe versus Wade being overturned. There are other things too that matter, but I mean, this is a big one, right? So, and then you also have, for example, the election in Alaska where the Democrat beat Sarah Palin. Mary Peltola, I believe her name is, beat Sarah Palin. Now, to be fair, in that instance, it wasn't just enthusiasm among the Democratic base in Alaska, because Alaska is a ruby red state. It was more because ranked choice voting, they implemented ranked choice voting over there. And so Sarah Palin is such a divisive figure that there were many people whose first choice was the other Republican, Begich, and then their second choice was Mary Peltola because they don't like Palin. But either way, I think ranked choice voting is a better system, period. I would love to make it so that you eliminate the idea of the spoiler effect. And we have these debates every time an election rolls around where it's like, hey man, if you vote for the Green Party, you're kind of taking your vote away from the Democrat, which will help the Republican. So, as long as we have first past the post voting, you're always going to have those arguments occur. And no matter where you fall in that debate, the fact of the matter is some people, if not most people, believe in the spoiler effect and say, you know what? You can't do it. A lot of people would like to vote for the Green Party or some other third party, but they feel I can't do it because I see how terrible the Republicans are, and my first priority is to defeat them. And if that means accepting some shitty-ass Democrat, I'll do it because I know that it's only going to be the Democrat or the Republican that wins. Well, the way you get rid of that is ranked choice voting. And so Alaska implemented it, and because of that, Sarah Palin is going gonzo, son. So ranked choice voting for the win. But either way, we're seeing a lot of evidence of the Democrats sort of surging back from the abyss. And this may impact Texas as well, man, which means even Bet on My Stork might have a better shot than people are giving him credit for, which is a crazy thing to think, because this is a guy who ran for president on the Democratic side and literally said, like, yeah, I'll take your guns. Like, what? And now you're gonna run for governor of Texas? I mean, to be fair, he was only talking about AR-15s, but still, that soundbite is they're just gonna clobber him over the head with that shit. But also, by the way, Abbott sucks ass cheeks, so of course, some people are looking for an alternative to him. But anyway, man, 11% supporting the Republican position and the Republican law in Texas on abortion. This is what they do, dog. Like, my go-to example that you guys have heard me bring up before is when Donald Trump was president, he signed a law that had a 6% approval rating. 6%. 6%. 6. It was on internet privacy rights. He allowed companies without your consent to sell your information to, other companies. They polled it, 6% support. He signed it. This is what the GOP does. This is what they do. Now, Democrats are no prize, and I have a million criticisms of them. But this sort of shit is reserved just for... These motherfuckers would pass something that had a 0% approval rating. They don't give a fuck. And their extremism has now become the mainstream among the elected officials. So, there are consequences. Look out. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.